the key of freedom of space. Wow, Gerald, there's a title if ever there was one.
I know. Well, this one ties in pretty well with the last one.
Yeah.
He starts out the tablet reminding us that as a species, that he tells us we're the ultimate of all things, but have forgotten our heritage. And because of that, and, the mentioning of these beings that were called forth from another dimension that have enslaved mankind with their darkness, well, he said we were forced into bondage by them. And a lot of us, our souls have been fettered by their chains of darkness. So he sees us completely enslaved. And, back when he said they decided to intercede on our behalf, this is why. This is a lot of the reason why, is because we've been unfairly deceived by entities that are much smarter than we are, that can take on various forms, and we're easily fooled anyway. So that's a crazy way to start this tablet, but that's how we start.
I know. It's ironic. I had a show yesterday about mind wars and mind control, Gerald, and we kind of led to the conclusion that there's a severe percentage of a high percentage of the population that is just open to mind control on this planet, and open to this section.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways to influence the mind, and the powers that be and these dark forces have been around for so long. They're clearly experts at it. And whatever culture you're in, we said in the last time, it doesn't matter which one you're in, that this dark light battle and these forces show up as various culture specific entities. And in this particular case, he's saying these ones show up as men. So, and the fact that we have forgotten who we are has been intentional. I mean, we've been deceived and lied to so frequently that it made it harder to figure out who we were.
It is a bondage of the soul.
And then when you get treated like you're dust in the wind, you start acting like it. So
it is bondage of the soul, though, Gerald. It is bondage of the soul.
Yeah. Well, he also goes on to kind of remind us that we're only a spirit, and the body is nothing but a shell to be cast off. Well, this is the idea of an avatar completely. And he says, this soul energy, this energy that composes you is all.
Like the snake shedding the skin.
And that all things that exist, including us, are only an aspect of greater things that clearly came from this creator of all, whoever this is. And then he goes on further to mess with your head and tells you that space is not boundless, but is partitioned by angles and curves. So now you're starting to get the idea of the containment envelope of a spherical simulator, a holodeck, if you will, where, material matter is nothing more than transient decoration. And I really like that scene in the Matrix where he's got Neo in a room where he's got a chair and a few other things, and he's leaning on the thing, touching it as if it's real. And, then he further explains to him that your sensations are only a signal that get aggregated in your brain. So, your idea of what's out there ultimately ends up simply in a signal that you interpret. So there's a lot of room for deception. Yeah. So the idea of this holographic simulator comes up again, and we're going to see, he talks about that here pretty soon. That we are locked in a dimension that you can't get out of unless you have the right key, and you have to be in your energetic body form to get out. So a lot of people have taken that to mean that, well, how far could an astronaut really travel away from the Earth if what he's saying here is true? So it's hard to know. Okay? But he also tells us that, we may think that we're here alone, but because of the basis of our energy, that that our energy body that composes us in this throwaway shell also connects this energy to other space brethren, he calls them. So we're interdimensionally connected to other beings far beyond what we know.
Yeah, the conquering of space, you're going to have to seriously do some biological tweaking, Gerald, to make that happen. I know that as a physical attribute.
Yeah, I posted something on my Facebook page today where some of the old timers who had been dealing with the idea of us being in a simulation, living in a holographic reality. I posted it up there for people who haven't seen that, and I think that these guys did a really great job in the presentation. I'll probably discuss it more, but given the amount of stuff we have to cover here, I don't think I can do it justice. But we will talk a little bit about the models. Mm-hmm. So we talked about a holographic model that he gives us, okay? And he tells us there are 9 dimensions and 9 cycles of space, and that there are similarly that there are 9 lords of the cycles, 7 of which were highlighted in his last tablets, number 3 through 9, who was the chieftain, right? Yeah. And he has discussions with that 9th cycle master as he's seeking specific knowledge in this tablet. And so the idea of 9 parallel dimensions really brings up some interesting theories, because now if you go back to string theory, in my book, I showed where these latest researchers had concluded there were 9 dimensions and 1 additional dimension of time. Well, that's exactly what Thoth tells you in this tablet through this one and number 10. I get ahead of myself, but so here he lays out that these 9 cycles, 9 cycle masters with their names that he gives you, and that there are 9 dimensions to go with that. Well, these 9 dimensions are these parallel dimensions to our dimension is what is mentioned, and that Thoth says he has access to all these dimensions, and that he can take on a body in any one of them based on whatever the proper material form is for that dimension, and clearly they might be different. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, that you're caught in this multi-dimensional reality that somehow can be traversed. And I've talked about this being related to the 9 Mayan underworld frequencies that some people show as being in the megahertz range, but if you start out with Schumann resonance that occurs right on the surface of the planet, it's basically a standing wave frequency that happens as a result of solar radiation striking a spherical resonator. And our Earth is a spherical resonator because it's got this shell and then it's got a metallic core, and it qualifies. So any planet that has that attribute will have a standing wave frequency that's impacted by radiation. Mm-hmm. So they call it the Schumann resonance, which is about 7.8 hertz on this planet, and it varies based on solar storms and the degree with which the Van Allen belt's keeping it all out and stuff like that. But in general, it's about 7.4 to 7.8 hertz. Well, that falls in your brainwave frequency in the alpha region. So by analogy, I was writing on my blog that these other 9 underworld frequencies could be computed just as easily as the one that computes the Schumann resonance, which is simply calculated by the speed of light divided by the circumference of the Earth. So if you take smaller circumferences moving inward toward the core of the Earth, you could probably come up with whatever these 9 frequencies were that seem to be tied to the evolution of consciousness, which I find very, very interesting that they had put this in their Tzolk'in calendar. So now all of a sudden you realize there's 9 dimensions that go with these 9 underworld frequencies. Is that coincidence? I don't think so, since Quetzalcoatl, we said, was Thoth, who invented that calendar. All 3 of them. So I think what he's telling you is that the brain waves from the ELF that fall into our brainwave state, there could be 9 of them that allow you, if you knew how to set your brainwave frequency, apparently you could focus on that and travel to these other parallel dimensions. Now, it doesn't seem that we have access to the 14 lower dimensions, but he does tell you that these 9 parallel ones that coincide with these cycle masters, and they control your chakras. So it's all very interconnected from this model standpoint, and the fact that it agrees with string theory now that they've correlated it with I believe they did a mathematical correlation between quantum theory and string theory.
Mm-hmm.
And they say they have a transform that allows them to take go from one model to the other, and it works. And I put that in my book, and I found that really interesting. Because, of course, when you have a transform and it can be repeated, then you have something that, scientists can wrap their arms around.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts about this 9 parallel dimensions? You realize if that's true, there could be an instance of you, 8 other or 9 instances of you in these parallel dimensions, including you, mm-hmm. that are kind of on the same evolution of consciousness path that are different aspects of you.
I just find it amazing, the corroborative evidence, the comparative histories of these different cultures, all talking about underworlds. I mean, you might think, historians just ignore this stuff, Gerald, that there's, the fact that one culture's talking about an underworld should be kind of, okay, well, where did they get this from? But to have all cultures building pyramids, all cultures worshipping serpents, and then them all talking about underworlds and levels of underworlds and a hierarchy of a structure of dimensions. And like, with the Irish epics, they talk about different dimensions as well, that people were able to go to. And so
Well, let's make it real just for a second, just for fun. Let's play this little mind game. So Admiral Byrd, I think it was 1948 in his diary, he ended up having an encounter with what I believe was Thoth, the master, up near the North Pole, okay, or the Arctic Circle. Mm-hmm. And he got there, went to this facility after he was brought down by their aircraft under no power control of his own, simply by a force field. Lands there, goes inside this building. Now let's say he's in the outer world at this point because he's on the surface of the earth. Now he's about to go into the underworld because he enters this facility and takes an elevator very deep down. Maybe he goes down 9 floors. I don't know. Okay, I'm just playing this game of how you might describe this encounter if you were, I don't know, way back with a cargo cult versus somebody more sophisticated like Admiral Byrd. Well, you just went into the underworld, and now you went into lower dimensions, right? You took an elevator down to lower dimensions. There might be cities on each floor, okay, that are just made out of the most precious jewels. You have no idea. So, is this they wouldn't call it a cave, but if there was civilization down there, they might call it a whole world. So just using the terms that they used. Okay, now try this on. We have underground facilities all over the United States, and most big industrialized nations do as well. Are those underworlds? If they got multiple floors, there's multi-dimensional access. If each one is accessed only with some special way, it's a matter of interpretation. But I think they were specifically talking about, in the Mayan calendar, I think they were talking about frequencies and dimensional access. But, it could be interpreted various ways.
It's amazing. I know the Admiral Byrd story. I actually covered it a couple of times. I never thought about it like that. I don't know whether he went to a physical place or a dimensional place, or I'm open to any of it. I know he definitely.
Well, that's a good question you bring up. If you go and you are going to have an encounter at some location with a extra dimensional being, if that extra dimensional being can take on the form of a body in your plane so that you can have an encounter with them, then who's to say, right? Who's to say that they're coming from their dimension? Or in Thoth's case, you realize in this very tablet, they ask him to come out of his body, and we're getting ahead of ourselves, and have an encounter with him because he's seeking to understand the definition of what the word is. He's looking for this ultimate meaning, okay? And I'm skipping forward a couple points on you here. I'm down at number 9, just so you know. And we probably don't want to go there yet, but we got it. But he was seeking this, okay? And I don't. I probably should go back to where I was. I lost my train of thought by jumping forward like
Here's
that.
another one, Gerald, and you know from the Irish epics that these guys had the power to be invisible, but I like to think of it that they were manifesting themselves here, and then they just get.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember what it was now. So, in that account, the ninth cycle master, number 9, asked him to come out of his body and come into the light. And when he did that, then he started teaching him about what he was seeking and this knowledge about the word, okay, and what it meant. So it's really an interesting, almost like a puzzle when he finally gives him the answer. And I had to think about it for a long time, actually. But I guess we're ready to go over to that. So, you know, most traditions only account for 7 chakras, and I equated these 9 frequencies to brainwave frequencies because we only had 7 chakras. But apparently, there's traditions that treat your nerve ganglia all the way up to having 13 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you know, it was pretty telling for me to see that there were 9 cycle masters, but only 7 of them allocated to us because it was related to our quantized energy at our chakras. So that's why I used the model with 7.
Was the light frequency as well? The 7 bands of colors.
Yeah. So you know the idea that these cycle masters would somehow have control over either wavelength or frequency, either one that's used in my equation 5a to control your access to higher consciousness. And really, that's what we're talking about here. Because if you had an expanded consciousness, perhaps you would know how to go to the brainwave frequency and do this dimensional travel like he's talking. Well, without getting too complicated, in the out-of-body training from Robert Monroe, he tells you, you know, how to go to locale 1, 2, and 3. Thoth tells you how to access different dimensions. And this is where tablet 10 gets so interesting to me, when I did that analysis. So, we'll get to that, but he does say that if you want to participate in what he was able to achieve in his incarnation, that only those that are seeking will ever hope to get free. So, what does he mean by that? Seeking what? What qualifies as seeking? You know, and back in the earlier tablets, he tells you it's seeking wisdom. Because he tells you the wisdom that you seek goes with you. It's eternal with your soul.
That's a philosophy I try to teach people in a basic everyday sense too, Gerald, where, you know, people want to have all the answers logically figured out sometimes before they ever do anything. And I said to people, sometimes you just need to seek or start your journey and be on the path of seeking, because the answers come while you're on the journey, while you're on the path, while you're halfway down the process. You don't need to know the final destination sometimes. And for example,
that's where it gets kind of interesting here, because he talks about this pathway to wisdom is hidden, it's occluded, and it's only revealed essentially with a little help for those that they detect are seeking. Mm-hmm. So you got to have faith, like you said.
Yeah.
You got to step out and do the seeking, and if you're seeking the light, like he says, then you'll be guided by forces that you don't even know about to get you to the answer. So this is where you know, you have to meet the prerequisites and take some action for this magic to start happening in your life.
And faith is free as well, Gerald. It doesn't cost anything. It's not an expensive commodity. But it's difficult to teach that to somebody, just to go and have a bit of faith sometimes that something might just happen. The thing you're looking for might just present itself.
Well, I know. Well, the thing is, excuse me, for most of us, one of our greatest fears is the fear of being duped.
Yeah.
Being tricked. It's really an interesting thing. So we'll avoid a lot of possibilities if we think there's anything in there that we might be getting duped into, I don't know, like Scientology, joining a cult or joining some organization that's going to think they have say over your ability to produce children or do this or do that. You know,
sure.
It's kind of crazy. So anyway, he says only one that's seeking may ever hope to get free. So I asked, you know, people ask themselves, well, what qualifies
What
as
qualifies as seeking then? Yeah.
seeking? Seeking doesn't happen from the stands. Seeking happens in the arena. And I hope I don't have to say anything more about it than that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get off your whatever is keeping you feeling safe and secure, and you're going to have to face whatever you're afraid of to be in the arena and be seeking.
Even if that arena is a Colosseum, where you're getting with the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah. Well, and also seeking to me is not just intellectualizing.
Yeah.
For me to experience higher energy, that means I really want to feel it. Okay, and be transformed by it. If I'm not having if you're not having a wings of Hermes experience energetically, keep working at it, because it's possible, and they tell you that's possible. Okay, now in the next section or the next point, he talks about the flame being the source of all things. And that it contains all things in potentiality. And this is where I wanted to go back to the double slit experiment with you.
Oh, nice.
Light comes from the creator of all, which he tells you in here in the next couple of points, okay? Well, when he says that light was used to create all matter, remember we talked about a box in this holographic model that was attributed to the creator of all, who has the law of matter. And we just said that light creates all matter, and that light is of the creator of all. So when he talks about this flame, he's talking about this energy that includes light. Now, in this double slit experiment, when they were firing these electrons through these slits, when they decided to fire them one at a time, without a camera, or without an imaging device on a receiver to detect the electrons, they would still go through both the slits and make the wave pattern. Okay, but as soon as they put the camera on and watched it, this light, it acted like it knew it was being watched, and it changed its behavior. Nobody truly understands that. And you studied this in physics, right? Mm-hmm. And it was such a mind trip to realize that some form of energy, including light, seems to have a mind of its own.
Sure.
A mind of its own that is coincident with the most unmanifested energy that can create all matter. And now that you realize that's exactly what Thoth is saying, the science matches the discussion he's having in this tablet. Light creates all matter, and light comes from the creator of all. Now, the only question is, how does light take elements and create matter, right? And then when you realize that, guess what? You realize you're an avatar and you're created from the same matter that everything else is. So light, you are created from light. And that's hard to understand, but he tells you that in this document as well. But he says the flame is the source of all things, containing all things in potentiality. And what I hear that saying is light, the flame, is the most unmanifested form of matter. At least as it pertains to creating matter. Now, all these other particles that are being broken apart in CERN, mm-hmm. They maybe have different aspects, but only the component of light was the level that he went to and didn't break down into the particles zoo. Okay, so there are aspects of light that we still don't understand, including action at a distance of paired electrons. Having a paired state of electrons, and they're sharing their polarization state. Well, you change the polarization of one of them. If you separate them, it'll change the polarization state of the other one, no matter where it is in the universe. Now, how is that possible? Well, this is the basis of quantum encryption keying that's going on right now, that can be done with light. So it's a very mysterious attribute of light that we truly don't understand.
Sure. There's like about 5 main components to quantum physics, but the double slit experiment is the one that really bakes everybody's noodle. It's a real noodle baker, there's...
But now all of a sudden this is where physics, becomes a religion, because at this point you realize that only the creator of all, or whoever created light, would have had the ability to give light the attribute to know that it was being detected. I mean, that's intelligence built into light.
Yeah.
That is just bizarre. That is just bizarre.
And this is non-negotiable. This is the facts that we've been dealing with for...
It's been around forever, but it's funny. Even though it's been around forever, most people in modern culture couldn't describe to you what the double slit is or what the ramifications are.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it was funny. I was thinking about that today. Most people on the street, you could ask them how a magnet works and they couldn't tell you. For an engineer, that's just ludicrous, but that's really, truly the state of
they can't,
knowledge base.
They have no idea.
I'm not bashing anyone. I had a professor at grad school, actually. His name was Robert Heck Nielsen, and he was teaching this course in quadratic networks. Really heavy-duty AI stuff. And he made this prophecy, if you will, one day in class. He said, he goes, you know, in probably less than 50 years, all menial tasks that we don't want to do will be done by robotics. And people will be unenslaved from that type of activity. They won't have anything to do, and what they'll spend most of their time on is social and relational activities. And only the people who are hobbyists will be involved in technology anymore at that point. And I found that hard to believe because I was an electrical engineer, but I think part of his prophecy is probably correct.
Yeah, so. For sure. Wow.
Oh, yeah. So, anyway, you know, this idea of the word comes up, and he uses this he capitalizes it. He said the word is the source of all existence. And he asked these cycle masters to explain this to him. Well, it's funny because I was on a radio show when this first came to me, is I was trying to figure out, you know, a lot of things about the Anunnaki, and I really didn't know that much about Thoth at the time when I first wrote my Anunnaki book. I knew about Nikshita, but I hadn't really studied the Egyptian culture as closely as I needed to know who all the gods were there and all the places they migrated. And we're still going through that in various cultures, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but in my past, being raised Southern Baptist, I knew the Bible pretty well. And I remember, in the New Testament, in John 1:14, it was talking about the Word becoming flesh. And so the idea of this word, you know, comes up there in this analogy to the same kind of seeking that Thoth is trying to understand. And he connects the word or order and intelligence to an original source of all existence, which we later call the creator of all, okay? And so, in John 1:14, though, this word became flesh, an avatar, if you will, to teach the humans how to escape their enslavement, right?
Mm.
Well, isn't that exactly what Thoth did in the Emerald Tablets here with his 32 buddies? It's exactly the same mission. It's no different. So I saw those 2 and 2, and then then all of a sudden I started pondering adding more AKA names for Thoth because he had such a long list. And now, after I've gone through the tablets, I realize how many different avatar bodies he's able to take on. It's totally up to him. There's probably uncounted ones that we don't even have records of. So, lots of different names for it. Ningshita, Thoth, Hermes, Mercury, Melchizedek, Jesus, Buddha. You go on and on and on.
This is going to be just like slipping into a suit.
Spiritual teachers to many different cultures.
This avatar business and this bodies and souls, this is just like slipping into a suit for these guys, Gerald.
Well, imagine how hard it is to keep track of a genealogy table if, he was born to this one, but now he's occupied by that one, but it only went on for 30 years, and then he left him, and now he's himself again. I mean, it's just like, okay. There's the blood and the spirit, and sometimes they're not the same.
Mm. Perhaps that's why we have all these different genealogy tables that are matching up or some way comparative. We have the god of the underworld in Ireland, the god of the underworld in Samaria, the god of the underworld in Mexico. You know, we have these same titles or same roles being played, and we identify.
Yeah. Hey, you brought that up earlier today, and I had a thought. Do you remember, in the Bible, Jesus goes to hell and navigates it, and he's untouched, right? And he comes out. He's able to go to the underworld and come out, right? Well, guess who does that in the Emerald Tablets? Who brokers for souls in either the underworld, either in he calls it the prison of the Dark Lord of Arulu, who has the underworld dark, but he also mitigates in this underworld area for light beings to reallocate when they are reincarnated too. So he's like this energetic soul manager. Well, so now all of a sudden you see Thoth doing it and you see Jesus doing it as well. So I'm telling you, so, you know, I've multiple times said I believe they were the same entity, even though I think he had different names. And after reading the Nag Hammadi Gospels and realizing what they believed about Gnosticism, this is exactly what Thoth is teaching. Going inside, finding your energy. The world of matter is an illusion and generally evil. And there's a way out of ascension by leaving your current state and evolving to a light state. So that's apparently where we're all going, according to these cycle masters. We're all evolving to a different state, which it was told at the beginning of the tablet.
This is ultimate immortality, Gerald.
Well, we're immortal spirits. If we claim our birthright as a sun soul spirit with this Ba energy that's been put into us by Enki, he tells us he did that, then, you know, we are immortal. It's just, you know, what plane of existence are we going to land in? And apparently, depending on which one you're in, you can choose to take on a body and be in that plane or not take on a body. And some of these beings, like the 7 cycle masters, they said they came from a place where they never had form. So, you know, so the idea of existing as an energy without a body is something you've got to start wrapping your head around, because that's the reality.
Wow.
And if you've had an out-of-body experience, that's not even a question for you. You know that's true. And I'm sure millions of people have. And, you know, when that happens to you, your idea of life after death is not such a mystery anymore. You're not looking for mediums and things to see if somebody can communicate with you to see if it's real. You already know it's real. And the Egyptians knew it was real too. Look at the rituals they went through to prepare themselves for that transition. They spent their whole lives preparing for the transition to something out of this illusion of Ka into what's real, which is their eternal path back to their ancient home with their ancestors. And by the way, Thoth tells us who some of those ancestors are back on Arulo. Isis is there. He mentions several others. Okay, Osiris he mentions. So these old Egyptian gods, guess what? They're the ones that are back on this place that he says we're bound for.
Wow. Do you think that we're born, Gerald, I think about the humans on the planet for the moment, that we all born with our memory wiped from our previous existences for a good reason? Is it just...
I do, actually. I think it has to do with making sure that everybody starts at an even playing field. Because imagine somebody shows up and has their full consciousness and can get out real easily. Well, maybe that does happen that we don't know about. But for the most part, unless you go through the process he tells you to preserve your consciousness, I think it's part of being back in the enslavement. Everybody ends up at the same level of darkness and has to find a way out of it. They even tell you that the first cycle master, that's his job, Untanos. So I think everybody starts out that place. You tell me in your childhood you didn't get drugged through the mud.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know anybody that didn't. And if they tell you they had a princely childhood, they never lied, cheated, did anything wrong, I think they're lying.
Yeah.
I think it's part of this order of reality that you have to start out in the mud.
You start out in the mud and you get yourself through it and hopefully evolve, ascend in this lifetime and get yourself to a place where it's a safe zone at the very least.
Yeah. Well, Thoth is real curious, and he's a good student, and he begs, basically, in a humble way, this Lord of the Ninth Cycle, he's the chieftain, remember,
mm-hmm.
to divulge to him the secret of the word, meaning the source of order is what he's really saying. And he answers him, tells him, he kind of gives him a lesson on how order and chaos are related, and that he says, you know, the word came from chaos and light came from fire. So he's kind of talking symbolically to him because he knows he's really smart.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
mm-hmm.
From the chaos we know order came, which was the creator of all establishing order, you know, establishing the law of time, the law of matter.
Sure.
Well, then he further says, and also, well, light came from that fire, you know, so he tells you that the word, the archetype, the true template of life came from this intelligence encoded as the word, and essentially points him back to the creator of all. And he says, if you want to experience that, this ninth cycle master is telling Thoth that, he said, then start by seeking order. And I know we talked about this at one point. I told you that our relationship to material objects is very important. And it was in an earlier tablet we talked about this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that where there's order, there's intelligence. And when there's disorder, there is no intelligence. Especially as it relates to understanding the energetic relation of objects in feng shui to your energy body and also to your visual system. I mean, it affects you. You know, beauty affects us. And disorder affects us as well. So he's telling you, go get some order in your life and you'll start to understand the source of the creator of all. They're like, really? So he tells him basically to balance the chaos of his emotions. Or to quell them. He says quell them and there'll be order in your life. Well, doesn't that sound like meditating to you? Quieting your mind, overcoming the thoughts that are triggering emotions, because we said that behavior is nothing more than a belated announcement of a thought you accepted as your own. Well, then there's going to be emotion with that as soon as you accept it. So learning to not think for a little while and just be can help calm you down. And that's what he tells him to do. And then he says something very esoteric in that. He says that when you do that and you seek order in your life, mm-hmm. that something magical happens, that the word will come to you. In other words, the creator of all will intercede and you'll be guided to your inner truth about who the creator of all is. And you'll have this relationship energetically. That's what he says. And, you know, this is kind of like on the order of what Thoth says about alchemy, and it's also similar to what religions believe about having encounters with Jesus, right? Is that you essentially, how do I say it? I'm not sure how to say this, but in balancing this chaos in your life, that in the alchemy model, if you meet these two prerequisites, is what Thoth tells us, if you transmute your ego and purify your consciousness, mm-hmm. whatever that means for you, whether it's a dogmatic list of you got to do's and don'ts, or I don't see it that way. I see it individually. You know whether what you're doing is right or wrong. So if you don't lie to yourself and don't do things that you know make you feel wrong, then you've got a pure consciousness. And your words match your deeds, okay? So you're in integrity with yourself. That's what I'm saying.
The stakes are high, Gerald, but the payoff is really high too. The payoff is freedom.
Right. You know, spiritual seekers have done this in very, very what we view as extreme cultures, where they might give away all their possessions and go on a journey in an isolated place like they do in India, mm-hmm. to overcome their desires and transmute their ego. Because what they're wanting to have is a vessel, an empty vessel that can have an encounter with the infinite. And that's exactly what the golden thread through time that is described in this alchemy book, in my book, talks about as the secret link for all alchemists through all ages, is that if you do these prerequisites, you'll have an encounter. Well, what does that mean? It means that these light forces will reach out, make contact with you, and guide you on your path. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, these 9 cycle masters are essentially telling Thoth that if you want to understand the word, do that. And you'll have that same experience. Seek and you'll find, right? That's what they're telling him. So they did it in a very esoteric way, but I thought it was very, very well done. So, you know, that lesson's true for us too. If you want to get order in your life, mm-hmm. and be balanced, mm-hmm. then learn to quell your emotions. Learn to conquer your real estate. Don't worry about conquering somebody else's territory. Conquer your own. Because it's hard to sit for 15 or 20 minutes and not have any thoughts and just experience the energy of the universe. And it's transforming. That's why people do it.
A lot of people want to project and they want to dictate to others, or they want to judge others, and they want to get into everybody else's real estate, as you say, Gerald. But inevitably,
Well, yeah,
you got to deal with your own.
Conquering your own ego in this lifetime is practically a full-time job. It's very hard. If you start early and you haven't had a chance to add layers to the onion of what you believe yourself to be, it's a lot easier. But, we're encouraged in this culture to be famous and be idolized. And that's what they want to be rich and famous. Everybody does that. I mean, not everybody, but, as an indication of that, if you look at culture, look how many people are watching in America, American Idol. Well, they're telling you that you want to be idolized and be sought out to be famous at the same time. Well, neither of those are good for the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you be professional at what you do, no matter what you do, and transmute your ego? Of course you can. So,
wow.
But that's, so this is very timely information for us now, as it was for people way back when he was first writing these tablets. Okay, so nothing has changed.
This is some great advice anyway, Gerald. This really is. This is important to all. And like you say, it is a full-time job, Gerald. It is a full-time job. No matter who you are on this planet, no matter what you do or who you are, this is a full-time job.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you one thing that's interesting to me is when I started going down this path and realizing that I was having strange synchronicities that were related to Mercury, it was a kind of a head trip to me. I didn't know really what was going on, but in retrospect now, it's quite clear to me that this process is exactly the alchemical process that Thoth described. It happened to me. I watched it happen to Krista. I've had several other fans who've written in and told me that's exactly what's happened with them. I think it's the golden thread that runs through all time, just like Thoth said in these documents. If you do what he says, try the hat on, see if you don't have an encounter, and get this light that he's talking about starting to ascend in you, and it starts feeling like pretty soon like you're not going to be able to be contained in the body. Well, I think that's true. I think that's really the truth. We are evolving into another form, just like the last tablet said. All of us.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, Gerald, I'm going to play tablet 9 unless you got any other thoughts to wrap up on.
No, I can't think of anything else. I have to tell you, I'm really excited about our upcoming conference, and Emerald Tablet 10 is one of my favorites. Besides 14 and 15, Emerald Tablet was one of my favorites because it asked about the concept of time. And that's always been an interesting thing to me. So anyway, we'll do that next time. But I'm ready to play it out if you are.
Yeah, it's just on the conference. It's 4 months from today, Gerald. It's the 23rd of today. So in 4 months we'll be having the final day at the Ascension on the 23rd of September. So 4 months from today, Gerald.
Yeah, well, I'm actually really excited about the response we've had so far. I think personally it's going
to
Gerald. Sell out very quickly, and we're going to be. And just for those of you listening, that we have an option to get a larger space, and we'll look to do that if that happens. So.
Yeah, and I'm going to try and make myself available to people to philosophize, to talk, and get some of the knowledge that I have to people. That's the aim of coming to Mexico and to meet you, Gerald, to talk to you and get knowledge from me and you to each other, and to give it to the audience as well, and to tie up some, links between commonalities of other cultures and civilizations, and it's just going to be a wonderful event. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I hope this doesn't sound weird, but when we first planned this event, it was early in the year. We hadn't done. I think we've only had done a couple of shows together.
Yeah.
And we weren't really focused on all the stuff that's going on in the world right now. Looking like volcanoes all over, earthquakes, just crazy earth changes. And we did a Nibiru status update not long ago, and the conclusion in there is there's a high potential that Nibiru could be in perihelion. And if that's the case, the idea that you chose the name an ascension event and it turns out to be in September when a lot of these events are coming to a head, I wonder if that was a coincidence, James.
There's nothing coincidence in this world, yeah. It's all planned.
I just thought I'd throw that out there so you have something to think about. But
for sure.
Anyway, listen, great show tonight. Let's play this out, and I can't wait till we get ready. Let's get the next one done.
Oh, for sure, Gerald. I'm really excited as well. So let's play Emerald Tablet 9, The Key of Freedom of Space.
Tablet 9, The Key of Freedom of Space. Thoth reminds us as a species that ye are the ultimate of all things, but have forgotten our heritage, forced into bondage with our soul, fettered by the chains of darkness. We are told we are only a spirit, the body is nothing but a shell to be cast off, and the soul is all. Thoth states that all exists is only an aspect of greater things, and that space is not boundless, but rather partitioned by angles and curves. A holographic simulator, it would seem, having transient matter for decoration. He instructs that we are connected by an energetic web to other space brethren. We are told that there are 9 dimensions or cycles of space, and the same number of levels of consciousness controlled by the 9 lords of the cycles, 7 of which were highlighted, 3 through 9, the chieftain. The access to the 9 worlds within worlds inside us, 33, pages 314 to 324 posited, most likely allude to the wavelength frequency of each chakra or ganglia. Most traditions only account for 7, but others show up to 13. Only the one who is seeking may ever hope to get free. The flame is the source of all things, containing all things in potentiality. The Word is the source of all existence. Thoth asked the Lord of the 9 to divulge the secret of the Word. Answering, "Through order ye shall find the way." Is this an allusion to sacred geometry or law and order? We are instructed that the Word came from chaos and light came from fire. To get order, balance thy life, quell all the chaos of emotion, meditate, and there will be order in life. Establishing order out of chaos brings forth the Word of the Source, transforming the soul force into an eternal flame. List ye, O man, hear ye my voice, teaching of wisdom and light in this cycle, teaching ye how to banish the darkness, teaching ye how to bring light in thy life. Seek ye, O man, to find the great pathway that leads to eternal life as a sun. Draw ye away from the veil of the darkness, seek to become a light in the world. Make of thyself a vessel for light, a focus for the sun of this space. Lift thou thine eyes to the cosmos, lift thou thine eyes to the light. Speak in the words of the dweller, the chant that calls down the light. Sing thou the song of freedom, sing thou the song of the soul. Create the high vibration that will make thee one with the whole. Blend all thyself with the cosmos, grow into one with the light. Be thou a channel of order, a pathway of law to the world. Thy light, O man, is the great light, shining through the shadow of flesh. Free must thou rise from the darkness before thou art one with the light. Shadows of darkness surround thee. Life fills thee with its flow. But know, O man, thou must arise, and forth thy body go. Far to the plains that surround thee, and yet are one with thee too. Look all around thee, O man. See thine own light reflected. Aye, even in the darkness around thee. Thine own light pours forth through the veil. Seek thou for wisdom always, let not thine body betray. Keep in the path of the light wave. Shun thou the darkened way. Know thee that wisdom is lasting, existing since the all-soul began, creating harmony by the law that exists in the way. List ye, O man, to the teachings of wisdom. List to the voice that speaks of the pastime. I shall tell thee the knowledge forgotten. Tell ye of wisdom hidden in pastime, lost in the midst of darkness around me. Know ye, man, ye are the ultimate of all things. Only the knowledge of this is forgotten. Lost when man was cast into bondage, bound and fettered by the chains of darkness. Long, long ago I cast off my body, wandered I free through the vastness of ether, circled the angles that hold man in bondage. Know ye, O man, ye are only a spirit, the body is nothing, the soul is all. Let not your body be a fetter, cast off the darkness and travel in light. Cast off your body, O man, and be free, truly a light that is one with the light. When ye are free from the fetters of darkness, and travel in space as the son of the light, then ye shall know that space is not boundless, but truly bounded by angles and curves. Know ye, O man, that all that exists is only an aspect of greater things yet to come. Matter is fluid and flows like a stream, constantly changing from one thing to another. All through the ages has knowledge existed, never been changed, though buried in darkness, never been lost, though forgotten by man. Know ye that throughout the space that ye dwell in are others as great as your own, interlaced through the heart of your matter, yet separate in space of their own. Once in a time long forgotten, I Thoth opened the doorway, penetrated into other spaces, and learned the secrets concealed. Deep in the essence of matter are many mysteries concealed. 9 are the interlocked dimensions, and 9 are the cycles of space. 9 are the diffusions of consciousness, and 9 are the worlds within worlds. 9 are the lords of the cycles that come from above and below. Space is filled with concealed ones, for space is divided by time. Seek ye the key to time-space, and ye shall unlock the gate. Know ye that throughout the time-space consciousness surely exists. Though from our knowledge it is hidden, yet still forever exists. The key to worlds within thee are found only within. For man is the gateway of mystery, and the key that is one with the One. Seek ye within the circle, use the word I shall give. Open the gateway within thee, and surely thou too shalt live. Man, ye think that ye liveth, but know it is life within death. For as sure as ye are bound to your body, for you know life exists. Only the soul is space-free, has life that really is a life. All else is only a bondage, a fetter from which to be free. Think not that man is earth-born, though come from the earth he may be. Man is light-born spirit, but without knowing he can never be free. Shadows around thee are falling, darkness fills all the space. Shine forth, O light of the man-soul, fill thou the darkness of space. Ye are son of the great light, remember, and ye shall be free. Stay not thou in the shadows, spring forth from the darkness of night. Light let thy soul be, O sun-born, fill with glory of light. Freed from the bonds of the darkness, a soul that is one with the light. Thou art the key to all wisdom, within thee is all time and space. Live not in bondage to darkness, free thou thy light form from night. Great light that fills all the cosmos, flow thou fully to man. Make of his body a light torch that shall never be quenched among men. Long in the past sought I wisdom, knowledge not known to man. Far to the past I traveled, into the space where time began. Sought I ever new knowledge, to add to the wisdom I knew. Yet only I found did the future hold the key to the wisdom I thought. Down to the holes of Amenti I journeyed, the greater knowledge to seek. Ask of thee, lords of the cycles, thy way to the wisdom I sought. Ask the lords this question, where is the source of all? Answered in tones that were mighty, the voice of the Lord of the Nine. Free thou thy soul from thy body, and come forth with me to the light. Forth I came from my body, a glittering flame in the night. Stood I before the Lord, bathed in the fire of life. Seized was I then by a force, cast was I to the abyss, through spaces unknown to man. Saw I the molding of order, from the chaos and angles of night. Saw I the light spring from order, and heard the voice of the light. Saw I the flame of the abyss, casting forth order and light. Saw order spring out of chaos, saw light giving forth light. Then heard I the voice, hear thou and understand, the flame is the source of all things, containing all things in potentiality. The order that sent forth light is the Word, and from the Word come life and the existence of all. And again spoke the voice, saying, The life in thee is the word. Find thou the life within thee, and have powers to use the word. Long I watched the light flame, pouring forth from the essence of fire, realizing that life but order, and that man is one with the fire. Back I came to my body, stood again with the nine, listened to the voice of the cycles, vibrate with power they spoke. Know ye, O Thoth, that life is but the word of the fire, the life forth ye seek. Before thee is but the word in the world as a fire. Seek ye the path to the word, and power shall surely be thine. Then I asked of the nine, O Lord, show me the path. Give the path to the wisdom. Show me the way to the word. Answered me then the Lord of the Nine, Through order ye shall find the way. Saw ye that the word came from chaos? Saw ye not that light came from fire? Look in thy life for this order. Balance and order thy life. Quell all the chaos of the emotions, and thou shalt have order in life. Order brought forth from chaos will bring thee the word of the source. Will thee the power of the cycles, and make of thy soul a force, that free will extend through the ages, a perfect sun from the source. Listened I to the voice, and deep think the words in my heart. Forever have I sought for order, that I might draw on the word. Yet know ye that he who attains it must ever in order be for use. Of the word through this order has never and can never be. Take ye these words, O man, as part of thy life, let them be. Seek ye to conquer this order, and one with the word thou shalt be. Put forth thy effort in gaining light on the pathway of life. Seek to be one with the sun state. Seek to be solely the light. Hold thou thy thought on the oneness of light with the body of man. Know that all is order from chaos, born into light.
Open to mind control on this planet, and open to deception.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways to influence the mind, and the powers that be and these dark forces have been around for so long. They're clearly experts at it. And whatever culture you're in, we said in the last time, it doesn't matter which one you're in, that this dark light battle and these forces show up as various culture-specific entities. And in this particular case, he's saying these ones show up as men. So, and the fact that we have forgotten who we are has been intentional. I mean, we've been deceived and lied to so frequently that it made it harder to figure out who we were.
It is a bondage of the soul.
And then when you get treated like you're dust in the wind, you start acting like it. So
it is bondage of the soul, though, Gerald. It is bondage of the soul.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he also goes on to kind of remind us that we're only a spirit, and the body is nothing but a shell to be cast off. Well, this is the idea of an avatar completely. And he says, this soul energy, this energy that composes you is all.
Like the snake shedding the skin.
And that all things that exist, including us, are only an aspect of greater things that clearly came from this creator of all, whoever this is. And then he goes on further to mess with your head and tells you that space is not boundless, but is partitioned by angles and curves. So now you're starting to get the idea of the containment envelope of a spherical simulator, a holodeck, if you will, multi-dimensional reality that somehow can be traversed. And I've talked about this being related to the 9 Mayan underworld frequencies that some people show as being in the megahertz range, but if you start out with Schumann resonance that occurs right on the surface of the planet, it's basically a standing wave frequency that happens as a result of solar radiation striking a spherical resonator. And our Earth is a spherical resonator because it's got this shell and then it's got a metallic core, and and it qualifies. So any planet that has that attribute will have a standing wave frequency that's impacted by radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So they call it the Schumann resonance, which is about 7.8 hertz on this planet. And it varies based on solar storms and the degree with which the Van Allen belt's keeping it all out and stuff like that. But in general, it's about 7.4 to 7.8 hertz. Well, that falls in your brainwave frequency in the alpha region. So by analogy, I was writing on my blog that these other 9 underworld frequencies could be computed just as easily as the one that computes the Schumann resonance, which is simply calculated by the speed of light divided by the circumference of the Earth. So if you take smaller circumferences moving inward toward the core of the Earth, you could probably come up with whatever these 9 frequencies were that seem to be tied to the evolution of consciousness, which I find very, very interesting that they had put this in their Zolkin calendar. So now all of a sudden you realize there's 9 dimensions that go with these 9 underworld frequencies. Is that coincidence? I don't think so, since Quetzalcoatl, we said, was Thoth, who invented that calendar.
The Key of Freedom of Space. Wow, Gerald, there's a title if ever there was one.
I know. Well, this one ties in pretty well with the last one.
Yeah.
He starts out the tablet reminding us that as a species, that he tells us we're the ultimate of all things, but have forgotten our heritage. And because of that, and, the mentioning of these beings that were called forth from another dimension that have enslaved mankind with their darkness. Well, he said we were forced into bondage by them. And a lot of us, our souls have been fettered by their chains of darkness. So he sees us completely enslaved. And, back when he said they decided to intercede on our behalf, this is why. This is a lot of the reason why, is because we've been unfairly deceived by entities that are much smarter than we are, that can take on various forms, and we're easily fooled anyway. So that's a crazy way to start this tablet, but that's how we start.
I know. It's ironic. I had a show yesterday about mind wars and mind control, Gerald, and we kind of led to the conclusion that there's a severe percentage of a high percentage of the population that is just
where material matter is nothing more than transient decoration. And I really like that scene in the Matrix where he's got Neo in a room where he's got a chair and a few other things, and he's leaning on the thing, touching it as if it's real. And, then he further explains to him that your sensations are only a signal that get aggregated in your brain. So, your idea of what's out there ultimately ends up simply in a signal that you interpret. So there's a lot of room for deception. Yeah. So the idea of this holographic simulator comes up again, and we're going to see, he talks about that here pretty soon. That we are locked in a dimension that you can't get out of unless you have the right key, and you have to be in your energetic body form to get out. So a lot of people have taken that to mean that, well, how far could an astronaut really travel away from the Earth if what he's saying here is true? So it's hard to know. Okay? But he also tells us that, we may think that we're here alone, but because of the basis of our energy, that that our energy body that composes us in this throwaway shell also connects this energy to other space brethren, he calls them. So we're interdimensionally connected to other beings far beyond what we know.
Yeah, the conquering of space, you're going to have to seriously do some biological tweaking, Gerald, to make that happen. I know that as a physical attribute.
Yeah, I posted something on my Facebook page today where some of the old timers who had been dealing with the idea of us being in a simulation, living in a holographic reality. I posted it up there for people who haven't seen that, and I think that these guys did a really great job in the presentation. I'll probably discuss it more, but given the amount of stuff we have to cover here, I don't think I can do it justice. But we will talk a little bit about the models. Mm-hmm. So we talked about a holographic model that he gives us, okay? And he tells us there are 9 dimensions and 9 cycles of space, and that there are similarly that there are 9 lords of the cycles, 7 of which were highlighted in his last tablets, number 3 through 9, who was the chieftain, right? Yeah. And he has discussions with that 9th cycle master as he's seeking specific knowledge in this tablet. And so the idea of 9 parallel dimensions really brings up some interesting theories, because now if you go back to string theory, in my book, I showed where these latest researchers had concluded there were 9 dimensions and 1 additional dimension of time. Well, that's exactly what Thoth tells you in this tablet through this one and number 10. I get ahead of myself, but so here he lays out that these 9 cycles, 9 cycle masters with their names that he gives you, and that there are 9 dimensions to go with that. Well, these 9 dimensions are these parallel dimensions to our dimension, is what is mentioned, and that Thoth says he has access to all these dimensions, and that he can take on a body in any one of them based on whatever the proper material form is for that dimension, and clearly they might be different. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, that you're caught in this